In this video, we are going to see on how to set up a development environment for learning or developing TypeScript-based applications, and that too using Webpack. Before even jumping into development environment, we need to know on what are all the basic things which might be necessary in order to maintain a development environment. The first thing is we need an editor. Any text editor would work. Next thing is we need a task runner. Why do we need a task runner for TypeScript? Web browsers would not understand TypeScript right away. They understand only JavaScript. Our TypeScript code needs to be compiled or transpiled to native JavaScript so that all the browsers can really understand. So in order to have this compilation or transpilation to be done, we need to have that one to be as a task which needs to be performed for every modification of the scripts we modify. So our TypeScript code needs to be compiled or transpiled. There is no question about it. And not just that transpilation, we also may need to minify those particular JavaScript files or say uglify those scripts. So that is removing all the unnecessary white spaces or tabs in the file and so on. And apart from these two, you also have the building and bundling. So which means you might be having a couple of other third-party JavaScript files also to be integrated and bundled together as part of your particular application. So which means imagine you have jQuery or Lodash where you would like to use all of those as part of TypeScript itself. Which means our task runner should be smart enough to actually transpile our TypeScript to native JavaScript and then integrate with third-party JavaScript files, bundle them together, and then minify them or uglify them later. So all of these tasks need to be performed for every modification we might be really making for any of those TypeScript files. And if you really do those manually, that will be quite time consuming. For those purposes, you might really need one of the task runners available as part of open source tools. The next thing is that we need a web server. Obviously, we need a web server to test any of the web applications, and even in this case, we will be having any kind of web server to be used. So you will be using IIS or IIS Express or Apache or node-based HTTP server, or any of the web server would work fine here. And you might need third-party JavaScript frameworks if you really need to integrate with them, like jQuery or Lodash and so on. And we also need a browser, obviously, because we need to test the web applications and they can be tested only using the browser. Any favorite browser of yours would work here. And next, coming to what do we have? So whenever I say what do we have in the market? Like these are all the tools which are minimum. And what do we have in the market in order to make use of those particular tools as part of your development? And we have plenty of tools in the market. So whenever I say plenty, we have tons of editors. We have quite a few task runners. We have literally more than 6 to 7 web servers which are really famous. And on top of that, you have plenty of JavaScript frameworks, libraries, plugins, and so on. And you also have 3 or 4 browsers. So if you think about editors, you have Visual Studio, you have JetBrains related editors, and at the same time you have Sublimators and so on. When you come to task runners, you have Grant, Gulp, and so on. And if you come to web servers, you have IIS, Apache, and node-based servers, and so on. And even Webpack is actually considered as a task runner. So you have all of these tools. And does it mean we can use all of these tools together? Not really. There exists really too many number of ways on how all of these tools or few of these tools can be used in order to set up an environment. And make a note that every particular application might be needing different sets of tools based on the requirements. So not one approach would fit all of the requirements of the respective application. And what is the best? There is nothing called what is the best here. It really burns down to your personal preferences or your organization policies, or what are all the real things which are necessary for that application. So you don't really need to have all of those tools to be used for each of your applications. Just make use of or just select a handful of tools which are really necessary for that application alone. So every application may have a different setup, and not all the applications would have the same kind of setup. And as part of this video, what are we going to cover? It is expected that you already have some understanding about Node.js and NPM. So if not, make sure that you have Node.js installed and NPM installed on your machine. On top of that, any text editor would work fine. In this case, you might be having Notepad or Notepad++ or anything. And I will be using Chrome, but you can use any of your favorite browsers. And as part of this video, we are going to develop a simple TypeScript 2.0 based development environment. So whenever I say simple, I just wanted to emphasize it might not be simple, but at the same time, it might not be as advanced or as complicated as it could be. We start with simple, and we are going to cover all of the advanced features later. But in order to start at something, we start at simple here. So whenever I say simple, the first thing is that we are going to download and install TypeScript using Node Package Manager. We are going to download and install Webpack, and then we are going to create a TypeScript app from the scratch. So that is a very simple Hello World app. And as part of that app development, we are going to configure TypeScript for compilation. We are going to configure Webpack for task running and performing other tasks. We are going to transpile or build or bundle your TypeScript application into a JavaScript application so that all the browsers can understand. We are going to test our application. We are going to debug our application using source maps and so on. So let us jump directly into our code. So first of all, I would like to create a new app, and in this case I would like to have that whole app to be created under a folder called test. Okay, so the first thing is that we need to have our particular application to be initialized with npm, and that can be accomplished using npm init. So that is the command which helps you to initialize your application using node related tools. So which means node and npm will be together working for your application, and you can just provide some basic information here. For now I'm just skipping all of those, which means it just provides all the empty information. And once you have that, you are going to see package.json file here. And let me open this in my editor. In this case I am using Sublime Text, and you are free to use your own editor. So you can see package.json. Right now it is having all the information whatever you might have provided as part of your npm initialization. So for now, as I mentioned, I did not provide any, and this you have all the empty information here. So let me clear this. Okay, and the next thing is that we need to install TypeScript. So let me install TypeScript right here. So I'm going to say npm install save developer dependencies and just install TypeScript. Okay, and now I would like to have a new folder to be created under test so that all of my TypeScript related files will be available under one folder, and I would like to name that folder as TS source, like TypeScript source. You can provide any folder name here. So inside that I'm going to create a new file, and this file currently is going to be a class file, and the name of the class is going to be message. And by default all the TypeScript files would have the extension TS. So I'm going to have a new TS file to be created, and this particular TypeScript file, as I mentioned, is going to be a class, and the name of the class is going to be message. So a typical simple message class file would look something like this. So you are creating a class called message, which is going to have a method called show, and once you execute that method, it is going to show an alert which takes something like hello world. Okay, and now if you open ts.src, you have message.ts. So similarly, I would like to create another file called app.ts. So in my opinion, app.ts is the starting point of our application. So which means our application starts here, that is app.ts. And it is going to be the responsibility of app.ts to eventually load this class file, or this class file loading some other class file, and so on. So the starting point of our application in this case is going to be app.ts. So I am going to code this app.ts something like this. So which means I'm saying that please import this class. So that is message. So it knows that it needs to import this whole class definition into a variable called MSG. So this MSG contains this entire definition available as part of this file. And during the onload event of our JavaScript, this is just a JavaScript code. So during the onload event, I am saying that please instantiate this particular class called MSG. So which means you are instantiating this class right here. So after instantiating it, the instance is going to be stored in O, and you are just calling show. So which means I am saying that during the loading of the window, please create an instance of this class and immediately execute a method called show, and that show is going to be actually giving us an alert called hello world. So that is a simple TypeScript which I have provided as part of this video. So we have one message, we have one app, and app is going to be the starting point. Okay, so now that we have the TypeScripts completed, let me close everything. We need to compile this. As I mentioned, JavaScript is the only language which could be understood by the browser. So it would not understand the TypeScript. So we need to transpile this TypeScript to a JavaScript file. So for that, we need to use certain kind of compilers. You can use the TypeScript compiler itself, that is called TSC, or you can use or integrate with the Webpack. We did not start with the Webpack yet, but let us consider I would like to use TypeScript based compilation. So in order to have TypeScript based compilation, the first thing is that we will be creating a file called tsconfig. So that is tsconfig.json. And this tsconfig.json is going to have all the compiler options. So whenever I say compiler options, first of all, ts.config says that it is the root of the TypeScript application, and it contains all the options which will be used by the TypeScript compiler and the TypeScript project. So you have plenty of options here. So if you go through the TypeScript documentation, you are going to see a hell a lot of options. But now in this case, I am going to say like this is going to be the only file it really needs to worry about while compilation. So I'm saying that please go through this file to compile it. But even though we said only app.ts, while it is compiling it or say transpiling it, it knows that it has to load another file called message. So TypeScript compiler is smart enough to actually load this file whenever it is trying to compile or transpile app.ts. So you don't really need to provide message.ts also here. You just provide the beginning point. And as long as that particular beginning point works with other files and imports other files, TypeScript really knows that it needs to compile other files as well. Cool. So just save everything here. So if you go back to your folder, you are going to see tsconfig. You have the package, you have ts source where you have created those two files, and you have node modules where you have just downloaded TypeScript. And currently I actually downloaded TypeScript locally, so which means local to this application. I do not have TypeScript installed globally. So this command is not going to work. TSC is not going to work because I did not really install it globally. So as I installed it locally, that tsc command is going to be staying inside node modules and bin, and here is that what you have, tsc. So let us see on how to use that tsc. So the easiest way, you can use node underscore modules dot bin. So you can say I'm going to node modules, inside that I have bin, and inside that I have tsc.cmd. So I can just say tsc. So the moment I say that, it did something. So let us see what it did. So let us go back to our Sublime, and you can see there is a new file called app.js. There is also another file called message.js. We actually created only these two files, app.js and message.ts. But once we actually transpiled it or used the tsc compiler, the app.ts has been compiled to native JavaScript called app.js. So you can see this is the real native code which could be understood by browser. Similarly, message.ts has been transformed to message.js in this fashion. So this is the real code which will be understood by the browser, but it doesn't understand TS. Okay, so let us remove this for now. So I go back to TS source. I would not want to have JavaScript files to be generated here, so I just wanted to delete them. I want only TypeScript files to be made available here. Okay, so that is one way of compiling TypeScript files. But as I mentioned, I would like to have a better way of handling or maintaining the environment. That is, I would like to have all the TypeScripts to be maintained inside one folder called TS source. Once they are compiled, I would like to move all the compiled files to a different folder called build or something. And in order to make it to happen, we would like to use a task runner. So in this case, I would like to use webpack. If you are familiar with Grunt or Gulp, those would also work. But as I mentioned, I would like to work with the webpack here, and for that I need to install a couple more packages. So the first thing is that I need to install TS loader, which will be used by webpack. So I just need to install that first. And next I need to install webpack directly. Okay, so let us go back to our package.json, and you are going to see we installed currently TypeScript, webpack, and TS loader. So webpack is going to use TS loader, which in turn uses TypeScript. So in order to work with the webpack, we need to actually create a webpack config as well. Just like tsconfig, we need to have another file called webpack.config.js. So that is essential. So let me create a new file, and I would like to call this file as webpack.config.js. So what do we need to write inside this file? In general, it contains the configuration of the task runner called webpack. We need to specify all the source files, where are they available, and how to compile them. After compilation, where to put them. So all of those criteria needs to be provided in the form of a configuration, and that configuration alone is nothing but JavaScript file again. So I'm going to simply paste whatever I have in place and just go through at a high level. So here we are saying that first of all I would like to use webpack, and I would like to use path module as well. So right now I'm saying that the entry point is app.ts, which is exactly like whatever we mentioned in tsconfig, and at the same time I am specifying output path. So I'm saying that please always create a build folder if it doesn't exist. So we do not have a build folder here, but this webpack is automatically create a new folder called build once it has been executed, and a new file gets created called app.js right here. That is inside the build. So it is going to create a build folder, and inside the build folder it is going to place app.js, which is nothing but a combined and bundled JavaScript of all the TypeScript files together with the integration to other third-party JavaScript files as well. And next, the module loader. So this, which means whenever it resolves any of these files, whenever it resolves any of these TypeScript files, and if it is included as part of tsrc, which means you are including it, not if it is, you are including tssrc folder also to look for .ts files, and at the same time if it finds any, then use TS loader, that is TypeScript loader, in order to compile those TS files. So you are mentioning the loaders here. So webpack doesn't really know about TypeScript. Webpack is independent on its own. However, webpack works with various loaders in order to transpile your particular files or script files in general. So in this case we are using webpack, and inside the webpack we are using a TypeScript loader which actually figures out like it needs to be loaded and compiling any of the TypeScript files it might be finding in those respective paths you might be including. So all of this configuration is straightforward as part of webpack.config.js. So once that is done, we need to just test our webpack. So in order to test it, again, we installed our webpack. If you see our webpack package, you installed webpack locally. So I do not have our webpack installed globally. So you can say I'm not using -g here, so it is not installed globally. So that is the reason you can't really use webpack command directly. So this is not going to work in my case, but if you installed globally, that is going to work. So as I installed it locally, again I am going to use node modules and go to the bin folder, and there you are going to see webpack. So just try to execute it. Well, now you can see it has created app.js. So let us go back here, and you can see there is a build folder right here. So once you open the build folder, you are going to see app.js right there. So this is the file which contains all the JavaScripts combined together after the transpilation. So which means it has transpiled all of these files. You might be having hundreds of TypeScript files here. All of those files are transpiled and combined together into one file called app.js, and it has been placed inside build. So if you see and come down here, you are going to see your code somewhere. So you can see this is our class file message, which is having an alert with a show, and at the same time we are supposed to see onload as well. So you can see you have windows.onload, creating an instance of it and calling the method. So you have this code and even this code merged together, or say combined together or bundled together into app.js. If you have third-party scripts as well, like jQuery or Lodash, all of those will also be bundled into one single file called app.js. Right now I did not uglify it, but you can add one more task to your webpack or any of your task runners to actually uglify immediately once it has bundled or generated a JavaScript file from the scratch. Okay, so let me close all of this. So we have app.js successfully done, and next thing is that we need to test our application. So for that we need to create an index.html file, or any HTML file for that matter. So I'm going to talk to HTML file in this way. So as part of this, we know that our particular JavaScript file is actually available inside this build folder. So I'm just going to say script and always use just the file available inside the build. Okay, and just for our understanding, I just wanted to say something like a text called demo, so that we know that it has loaded the web page. Okay, so you can see from the HTML perspective, we are not really loading any of the TypeScript files. Browsers do not understand TypeScript files. They understand only JavaScript files. So we are actually using only one JavaScript file which gets compiled based on all the TypeScript files you might be included as part of your webpack. So now that we created our index.html, we need to test it, and in order to test it, we need to have a web server. So right now I do not have any web server being used as part of Node. So if you really want one, you can actually use one too. So that is, I can just say npm install http server, and you have tons of HTTP servers as part of your Node package manager related plugins. So you have really tons. So this is pretty straightforward, and again I just wanted to use it only locally, and that too only for this application. So if you want to use this HTTP server globally, go ahead and install globally. So I just need to install this HTTP server, and once that is installed, you should be able to see that one as part of your node modules as well. So if you go to node modules here, you are going to see HTTP server as well. So once you have the HTTP server, the next thing is that start the HTTP server alone. So I have that inside node modules, that bin, and inside that I have HTTP server. So right now you can see it has started a HTTP server at localhost 8080. So now I can open my browser. Now I can say localhost, and instead of A01 I can say index.html and press enter. And now you can see it has given hello world for us. So press OK, and you are going to see the output as a demo. And let me open developer tools, and let me clear here, go to network, and make sure that once you refresh it, you are actually getting index.html and app.js file alone. So if you click on app.js, you can see it is nothing but the pure JavaScript file which has been imported straight from our transpiled files. Okay, so this is the easiest way on how to have your HTTP server, and of course I can also use Control-C to actually cancel it. And if I refresh this is not going to work because our HTTP server is down. And if you have IIS Express installed and configured accordingly, you can just execute right here. I can just say run IIS Express here, and even in this case I'm having localhost 8080, and I can just say refresh again, and it should be able to give us hello world with the demo right here. So you can use any of the web servers regardless. Okay, so that is pretty much about the Webpack and TypeScript, working with the web server and so on. But the next thing is that we need to debug this. So let us go back here and go to our app.ts, and probably I would like to have a debugger statement here. Yes, so I have a debugger statement here, and you modified your TypeScript. Once you modified it, again you need to regenerate it, which means you have to execute your Webpack in order to get new part of it. So let me clear everything and again execute our Webpack. So this is the command. Every time you modify your TypeScript file, you always need to execute it in order to get the fresh version of your TypeScript. So if you open app.js again, hopefully you are going to find your debugger right here. Okay, so now let me go back here and press F5, and now you can see it has stopped in the debugger here. And yes, you are able to stop, but this is not your TypeScript file, and this is going to be pretty difficult to understand on what exactly this one is. So our intention is to actually debug our TypeScript, but not the transpiled JavaScript. So we need to be able to really debug and troubleshoot our particular TypeScript files, but not really the transpiled files. So for that purpose, we need to actually have source maps to be created. So which means a source map means it is just a link which actually links the JavaScript files together with the TypeScript files. And if the browsers can understand those source maps, they can easily link up and load the respective TypeScript files automatically. So let me close all of this guns. And in order to enable source maps, the first thing is that you need to open your tsconfig file and make sure that you have compiler options with source map set to true. So that's the first thing. So you go to tsconfig.json and specify compiler options, and inside the compiler options make sure that source map is always set to true. So that's the first thing. And the next thing is that as we are using Webpack, so you need to still go to the Webpack here and make sure that you specify dev tool with source map. That's it. Those two are the only modifications you really need to do. So just for our understanding, let us delete this whole build folder, and let me go back to my command prompt and re-execute Webpack. And now you can see it has created app.js.map. Earlier it was not creating it. So this is nothing but the source map file. So if you go back to your your build folder, you are going to see app.js. And on top of it, you also have app.js.map, which is nothing but we call it as source map file. So what is the use of source map file? So this is our previous one. You do not have any source maps or not even TypeScripts here. Let me press F5 and see if there is anything special going on. And now you can see this has actually loaded app.ts file. So that is our TypeScript file. And this is the real TypeScript file where you can really debug. And how did we get there? Actually, Webpack is smart enough to actually give us the whole folder of TypeScript source here along with your message.tcs message.typescript and also app.ts file as well. For that matter, you can go to the message.ts and put a breakpoint here and further continue, and you can see it has stopped right there because this app.ts is actually executing o.show, and that o.show is actually trying to execute this method where it has stopped right here because we specified the debug point right there. And pressing further, you can see I have the hello world and we should be able to see demo there. Let us refresh it again. We have the debugger. Continue, and still it has stopped here. Continue, and then we are going to see the output. So now let us modify a bit more. So probably I go to message.ts and probably hello world 2. And again I go back to here and I have to re-execute my webpack. So this is going to be a pain. Like every time you modify your TypeScript files, always going back to the command prompt and executing the webpack is going to be a bit more time consuming and makes our developer life much more miserable. So for that purpose, we just wanted to have some kind of automation here. So which means I would like to have webpack to automatically monitor or watch all those TypeScript files, and if it finds any kind of modifications to those TypeScript files, it has to automatically execute the respective loaders and get the TypeScripts to be transpiled, and all of this process needs to be automatic. And for that purpose, I just wanted to specify one more configuration option in our webpack.config. That is, at the very end I can just say watch equal to true. So whenever I specify that, it is going to watch or monitor for all those particular TypeScript files and compile them as they are modified. So in this case, I just wanted to take this one like this, and let me get back to this guy. So let me execute the webpack here. Now you can see it has executed it, so which means it has transpiled that whole all of your TypeScript files, and the new app.js should have hello world 2 as because that is a new modification I did. And if you go back here, I press F5 and we should be able to see hello world 2 with no issues. Now let us modify. So I go back here, and inside my message.ts I would like to say, so let us watch this one. So I would like to modify this something like hello world 3. So I just wanted to keep this one here so that we can see simultaneously in how the things are happening. So I modified this one to hello world 3, and the moment I say Control S, that is I'm trying to save it, and now you can see it has actually compiled immediately, or say transpiled immediately. You don't need to worry about this one anymore. You just go back to your browser, press refresh, and you are going to see hello world 3. Similarly, I go back here and I modify this one to 4, save it, and you can see it has generated it, and now refresh it and we should be able to see 4.